Let me start off by how did you get to know each other? You were
Well,
neighbors.
this is a good occasion for us to get together here, Toby. I've known you sometime when I was still in the Senate,
Yes, sir.
1990s, mid 90s there. But talking about our having known each other with President Ramos, I mentioned earlier that we got really to know each other in 1981 when we were both building our respective homes in Ayala, Alabang.
Okay.
It's a long time ago. I think at that time there were very few building in Alabang. It's too far from Manila. It's practically rural. But then, much earlier, I remember now, the friends of my sisters, Mila and Teresita,
Okay.
my late sister Teresita, during the Malacañang days, and even during the National Defense Days, 1950, when Ramon Magsaysay was Secretary of Defense, 51, we already knew the group of then young Lieutenant Fidel Ramos,
Oh.
because his contemporaries in the PMA were Eddie Ermita and the group of Frankie Vargas, my brother-in-law. I think they're class 58. And also some other contemporaries. Alba,
He was
Alba.
he was pretty fresh out of
Of
West Point then,
yes.
no? Oh,
Yeah, I think he was West Point, what, 52?
yeah, 50, 51, I think.
53, 54. But if he were in the PMA, he would have been classmates. Because that's 57, 58 sila, Eddie Ermita, no?
Yes, yes, yes.
So,
But I understand your father wanted to wanted
yes, the Secretary of Defense, Magsaysay, this was from President Ramos when we used to have a few times together, that after West Point, several years, he finished his engineering, civil, came back, and Secretary Magsaysay asked him to come to the office in the DND, Department of National Defense, and ask him personally to join the office of the secretary as an aide-de-camp. But I think President Ramos at that time wanted some action, meaning battalion combat team. So, of course, my father had to respect him because he had been away for several years in the U.S.
Yeah.
And coming back to the Philippines, he wanted some action, a young fellow, maybe he was maybe 22, 24,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
So he allowed him. That's how he landed going to Korea after a while.
But the first actual meeting happened when you were constructing your home.
Yeah, we were, well, I was already
You were-
43.
You were a businessman already then. No?
Yeah, I was in cable TV. That was 81.
And he was head of
And
the
he was
PC.
with the government, Philippine Constabulary. I think he was the deputy or PC chief. So I was looking at this house, having 4 daughters. He's building a house for his family, with Ming, 4 daughters. I was building for my son and daughter when they would come back. So they'll just compare each other. Oh, came to me, call me Eddie.
Didn't want to, no? Didn't want
But
to.
we have known each other in passing, much earlier.
Your impressions of him then? I mean, you know, he didn't want to have the title or the rank, no? He, saying, just call me Eddie.
Call me Eddie.
Oh.
Yeah. And also, I would include in my relating with him when he when he was running in '92, I used to go to his office with my cousins, no?
Oh.
The Bansons and the
Oh,
Magsaysay,
wow.
92. So I was there. Then suddenly I stopped going because Miriam Defensor drafted
you.
me as her vice president.
Yes. People's Reform Party.
Yeah, PRP, People's Reform. Now I say, what happened to him? What happened to JUN Magsaysay? He used to come here in my office. So one of my cousins said, I think it's Tito Katindig, Mr. President, General, he was drafted as the running mate of Miriam. And that was like the last 3 months, February, last 3 months. Miriam could not find a good running mate. And the people around her convinced her to get to know me. And of course, wanted to see if the name still rings a bell, offering like that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try it.
So how did that feel like? I mean, you were on opposite
I
sides
think,
of the fence with your neighbor.
I think there were also, there were no personal hurt or harm on either our sides. But I was very much impressed that after the elections, when President won, as a minority president, I think he got about 25 or so percent of the total vote. There were what, seven candidates, and that's pretty good. Within 30 days, he was able to put together a strong, united political coalition, and that was very, very significant on the basis of after 6 months or more of political attacks and counterattacks, that right after, all the other candidates put themselves together and pledged to help him out in his Ramos administration in 1992 to 98. And that was a big part of his having given his word that there'll be really united support from all other factions.
How did that impress you? That he would...
Well, that's it's an essential part of leadership, presidential leadership, that you unify the country by unifying warring factions. No? After politics, it's country. So to me, that is the essence of presidential leadership. You're able to unify, and the people will see that this fellow's not partisan, he's not political, he just wants to improve the economic and social and the well-being of the people, of the Filipino.
But well, I guess you said you said it, you know. He's not a politician. He's not the run-of-the-mill politician. I mean, in Philippine politics, it's either you win or dinaya ka, no?
Yeah.
And in the case of and meeting up with your and reconciling with your political foes is generally a no-no. But this was something he went against the grain, no? And it eventually formed that coalition.
Yeah, the Lakas-Laban, no? Lakas-Laban. Precisely in '92, he started doing that, and he was able to get a very important. Oh, there were quite a few, because those were the early '90s that the mantra of privatization, liberalization, deregulation, etc., demonopolization was very strong because of the World Trade Organization, WTO.
Yeah.
And for him to be able to pass for all the laws needed for all these things, including demonopolization, he had to have the Congress, the Senate, and the House work together. That's when I think the President and his very capable first team, the Cabinet, put together the LEDAC law, Legislative Executive Development Advisory Council. And we were very, very much excited about it. We in the policy making, Congress and Senate, because at least once a month, we would go to Malacanang and meet our counterparts, the executive, the cabinet members, kami naman sa Senate no? And Congress. So it was a continuous thing. That's one thing that I think the President showed a lot of initiative, having been doing that when he was in the military, taking care of regional meetings, provincial. So it was like a natural way he would conduct relationships with the local government, and in this sense, between the executive and the legislative, LEDAC.
He was a consensus builder, no?
Yes,
I mean,
yes.
That was the LEDAC was actually a very good consensus.
He's not a top-down, although I think he still is, was top-down, meaning autocratic. But he is the least autocratic because he already had done the research, because he's a man of deep. He studies a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, he used to study a lot, and his team also would study a lot. There's a lot of research. So when he has a measure or a study, he would pen in his red pentel, please do this, please do that, add this. So sometimes you would get a copy of that. It's public naman yung his marginal notes.
Yeah.
He's very famous for that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Actually, up to now, I would get some from the RP Dev, from May, Gaffwood, penned in. Dear Senator Jun, Tiger, Kuno,
Okay.
best regards, Eddie Ramos, in red.
Yeah.
So I get it because we're neighbors in Alabang.
Yes, yes, yes.
But he did a lot of research. But it doesn't end there. He would get things done. That's the difference between politicians and executives. They would get things done.
But you were coming from a entrepreneur, businessman's perspective, ano? How did you mentioned it, ano? Demonopolization, breaking up the cartels, and leveling the playing field. How did that
No,
appeal
it's,
to you as a
Well,
business executive?
having been a bit active as an entrepreneur in cable TV, 1972, and having been a very new technology then, no? Sila Oscar Lopez, Russell Swartley,
Right.
brought in the technology. After a while, 78, then President Marcos issued, there was no Congress then, it's a Marcos government, issued a presidential decree to make exclusive cable TV nationwide,
Wow.
in favor of sining makulay. So it's like a monopoly.
Yes,
So we felt very stressed out. We could not expand anymore. And although he's a very nice man, General Carion of Board of Communications, which is now NTC,
Yes.
used to call me June. Kaya the President issued this PD 1512, President Marcos, so you cannot expand anymore. We were already on our third cable system after Subic, Olongapo, Lucena.
Yep.
So wala na. So we were very frustrated because, you know, when you're in your 30s and 40s and
Yeah.
you are, there's a lot of demand for your service, you would like to expand and partner with other provincial investors.
You were muzzled.
But when Cory came in '86 after the original EDSA, of course supported by Fidel Ramos as one of the EDSA heroes, that was a very promising start because it was through this new administration that demonopolized cable TV's monopoly.
So, telecommunications.
Yeah, President Ramos was Secretary of Defense at the time, no? 86, 87. There was no Congress and Senate yet. Code Constitution.
Yes.
So the administration, this was a special effort by, what's his name? Josie Lichauco. Josie, JTL, Trinidad Lichauco,
Yes.
who was with the PMS,
Yes.
Presidential Management Staff, and Teddy Boy Locsin, and the group of EDSA, including Secretary Ramos, put together an EO 205 that demonopolized the industry.
So he was just actually continuing where the previous administration started.
Yeah,
off, no?
yeah.
And that
So it
was-
opened up, and a lot of Filipino entrepreneurs went into it.
I was going to ask you on the political side. I mean,
Yeah,
you eventually joined. So you didn't make it in the '92
yes,
race,
vice presidential, yes.
That was Estrada, no?
Yeah.
Joseph Estrada. But you did make a run for the Senate in '95.
95, yeah.
For-
You know
for-
how that happened,
Yeah.
Toby.
Uh-huh.
It was 1994.
How were you convinced?
Huh?
How were you convinced to
Okay.
run with?
So in 94, so President Ramos, no? So the cable TV industry, the fledgling, we were, I think, 65 cable operators, decided to have its first national convention. So they said, we want President Ramos to be our guest speaker.
Okay.
I said, you want President Ramos? I was the president of the Cable TV
Yes.
Association. Of course, ako naman. So we wrote, I signed, and he was very happy to come. So that was 94. Kunyata yun mga, usually April, May ang cable convention. I don't know if it was Manila Hotel or one of the hotels. But it's like getting to know you again after the political of 92.
Yeah.
After a while, yeah. I want you to come to Malacanang,
Oh.
you know, so we can help your industry. So, of course.
Oh.
Huh?
Oh.
Yeah, so, ganun lang. Nung, after a while, some of his people were asking me, do you want to join the Senate? Siyempre, ayaw ni Miriam. PRP kami. Sabi niya, ba't ka papasok dyan? Yan ang talo sa atin. So, but I was already quite close because a lot of people around him were also my friends. No? Sila Ermita, sila Rene De Villa. And well, I told you the idea, no? So, finally, I said, talk to my wife, to my mother, buhay pa yung mother ko. Yeah, because mga kanyan, good family. Because the father of President Fidel, Narciso Ramos, I think, was together with my father in the Liberal Party, then 1940s. Narciso Ramos, no? I think he was a congressman
He was, yes.
before he was taken as Secretary of
Yeah.
Foreign Affairs. So they were together with my father. So it's like a generation, 1940s, after the war, then 1990s, 95. So pinasok ako. Pero at that time, I think there's only 12 candidates.
Yes.
12. Nag-combine Lakas-Laban with Ed Angaras and
LDP. Yes.
Naphtali Gonzalez, no? Ed Angara, Naphtali. Even Siling Fernan.
Siling Fiona.
LDP yan, di ba?
Yes.
Lakas-Laban. So, sabi ko, Mr. President, even if I'm not chosen, kasi malaki na yung pagpipilian eh.
Yes.
Pero 12 pa rin, di ba? It's all right. I'm very supportive as a private citizen. Si Joe de Venecia naman, medyo rin naman si Joe eh. I think we were working through Manang Leti Shahani.
Yes.
We had some common friends, no? So Manang Leti was very instrumental. So I wrote President through Manang Leti. Nakuha ni Manong Joe DV. So pagdating kay FVR, sabi niya, tignan mo si President. Yun ang kwento ni Joe. Jun nga niya, sumulat pa sa inyo. Pledging support even if he's not chosen. Kailangan pilitin natin ito. So, I think they were choosing amongst Abadia.
Yeah. Boy,
I think Boy was also considered. And Amina Rasul Bernardo, at saka ako. Yan ang gawan.
But you were picked.
That's how I got in 95.
Yes.
Pero I went to see Miriam.
Yeah, I'm going to ask eh.
Yeah.
Ano naging
Well, of course.
ano naging relasyon ninyo pagkatapos?
Okay. Ayun akong, she didn't want to get agitated siguro. So it was the husband who's a good friend.
Jun.
NYS, Jun Santiago. Ikaw naman ganyan, ba't ka sasama? Ako nag-commit na ako, I'm sorry. But I came here, I went to their house in Quezon City, West Avenue yata, no? Just to inform Miriam and you. Wala masabi sila. I mean, whether they're objecting or not, I went there to go personally. After a few weeks, tumakbo naman si Miriam.
Yeah, she ran.
Yeah, and she won.
Yeah.
So we were together in the 95 Senate.
Yeah. That's right. But you were, you were also instrumental actually in a number of legislation. What what appealed to you actually in that program of government?
Those times were very active of the demonopolization of energy, EPIRA law, meaning unbundling. So you have the generators, distribution, retail, parang gano'n, no? That was how it started. So that was during President Ramos' time. And sometimes, Camila Freddy Webb, Sonny Alvarez, Congressman Tinga, Punsalan, myself, you would go to Australia to look at their energy system. Unbundled na yun, no? And then also in England, they started that. So we were all together with the president. So we met a lot of his friends and also high officials. That was 96, 97, 98. So his last 4 years, 3 to 4 years, active kami with him on the electric issue, power issue.
Yeah. Tama, breaking the monolith that was Napocor and diba?
But even more significant is breaking apart the PLDT monopoly.
There.
So during President Ramos' time, I think they had as many as 8 or 9
new players.
But eventually there were only about 3 or 4 that survived, including Globe, no? But it improved the competitiveness. And services improved kasi may choices ng Filipino. That's when mobile telephones started coming in.
So those were the two that you were involved in, that you know. Power and
telecoms.
Telecommunications.
I was trade industry.
Yes.
Chairman of trade. Trade and industry. That was.
Yung MSMEs.
I think Mar Rojas was also there.
Sa house.
As a house chef. He was the house counterpart with Gary Teves.
You were also involved with MSMEs, no? Because of the micro
SME, small and medium enterprise. Yeah. Well, I was. This is the amendments to the SME law to not really to compel, but to authorize banks, no, commercial banks and including government banks, to set aside 10% of their loanable portfolio for small and medium enterprise. Because there were so many banks that had so much money, but were afraid to lend to SMEs. At that time, I think small and medium was just defined as small is up to 10 million. Medium is up to 60 million. So at that time, no, what was it? 27 pesos to $1. So ayaw magpautang yung mga bangko. Or if they would, it's like collateralized. Show me a good title property.
But that's exactly what
So
SMEs do not
SME
really
law.
have.
Yeah, up to now, I think the SME are having a hard time. Although Land Bank and some foreign banks are more aggressive. They're more used to higher risk. High risk ang small and medium.
Yeah, yeah. But that was typical. That was typical FVR also. No? He didn't want to leave the little guy behind. He wanted to look after them as well.
His deregulation, privatization, all pointed to more of the small guys being given an opening. I would think that President Eddie was following some kind of principles of leadership. If you remember Stephen Covey, you've heard of, this was 20 years ago, 7 Habits
Yes, yes.
of Highly Effective People,
Yes,
no?
yes.
And also principle-centered leadership. It's like justice, equity, fairness, of course, honesty, integrity, and trust. So those are all his guiding principles. But I know that among the other presidents, what came close, which is my bellwether with the late President Ramon Magsaysay, was President Ramos.
Oh,
Not for anything, because they were both from the National Defense. They were both Secretary of Defense. President Ramos more of an officer. My father was a guerrilla. President Ramos civil engineering. My father was a mechanic who became a transportation manager. Parang practical side, no. So there were quite a lot of general similarities. We're from Zambales. They're from Pangasinan, neighboring Ilocano provinces, no? So, but the thing is, both are non-lawyers. They're non-lawyers, and I think it's good now that our people are opening their options, other than the traditional lawyers or politicians, to allow newcomers to come in. So, like my father, he was putting a lot of rural development initiatives,
oh yeah.
agricultural, etc. So, in Mindanao, he had a lot of initiatives. I was reading about his zone of peace and development. Was that Camp Abu Bakar? I think that's a Zopad, no?
Yes, yes, yes.
I think they set aside over 10,000 hectares. That's a zone of peace and development. So parang it's like a safety area that anybody can come in and just develop it. I just hope that the future, that after him, it was ERAP, that should have been respected. But unfortunately, it became muddled.
Took a different turn.
Nawala na, oh.
You were also chair of. Did you chair the Agri Committee?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was 2002.
2000. After him na.
After him,
Okay.
during his time, it was economic affairs and also trade and industry, but mostly economic affairs. So that time, kami ni GMA magkatabi. We won. She won her re-election,
Mm.
and I won my first election,
Your first
95. So it was like GMA, Raul Rocco, and myself.
Oh,
We were the top three
mate.
at the time. So, makapagal magsaysay. So neighbor ko si GMA. We were seatmates.
Oh, oh.
You know, the Senate is like a classroom. Eh.
Yes, yes.
It's by alphabetical.
Oo nga, no?
Yeah. So she would turn over to me some of the bills just to maybe make me more engaged. Alam niya na introvert tayo eh. Hindi tayo bugado eh. Engineer. So she would turn over yung small and medium enterprise, Foreign Investment Act, yung mga ganun. So I would willingly defend this on the floor. So I learned fast with good people like si Ed Angara, Siling Fernan especially. Siling Fernan is fantastic. Was fantastic.
It was a very productive. It was a very productive Congress, no?
Yes.
Legislative at that time, and I think it was also because there was a lot of engagement that the
Well,
executive-
the LEDAC of President Ramos, LEDAC meeting at least once a month. That would last for 4 hours, huh?
Yeah,
And
and it would start
the
early.
executives would listen to us and we'd listen to them. And President was there with this unlit tabacalera or Alhambra, and just guiding us. His presence was enough to make us behave.
Oo nga, no?
Oo, siyempre, andyan ang presidente, kaya you respect his cabinet members, and they respect naman the Senate and Congress.
And the meetings
Leaders.
were held in Malacanang.
Yeah,
It,
it's nice.
that you would
Ngayon yata
come to
wala
the
na eh.
palace. Yeah.
Wala nang LEDAC ngayon, cabinet lang meron.
Di ba? That you would come to the palace. Di ba? Become part of
And
it.
we feel also recognized and honored
Yes.
dahil the executive invites us and to engage with the cabinet. So it's a very nice relationship.
But that was also creating a buy-in from you
Yeah.
legislators, right? That was also building
Yeah.
support for his agenda.
Meron silang yung the culture I think of President Ramos and his people is based on constant meetings. So I'm sure when he was with the military, with the national defense, there are a lot of constant meetings yan with LGUs, no? So it carried on sa presidential implementation of policy to action.
So he was a pretty good manager as well.
Yeah.
Is that nakakagulat ba yun from a military man o hindi naman?
Kasi kung siya is being an engineer and having appreciated technology of that time, let's say analog as opposed to digital. But incidentally, when the few times we were invited to his office in Malacanang, he had a lot of computers. So it's like we were saying, he's much well-versed into technology, you know. We're entering the digital age during the late 90s, 96 to 98.
He embraced it. Ano?
Papasok nun. So I was in the chairman of the Committee on Science and Technology. That's when we passed the e-commerce law in 2001, and also the anti-money laundering. That was we sponsored that on the floor. And the Y2K, you were there, Y2K, 2001, dahil nga yung pag-change eh. So we were handling that.
What if FVR didn't push through with those, those reforms? Where would that have left us?
Well, we were like the rising tiger of Asia at that time. And you're saying, what if he did not push through? Well, it would have been like now. Now we are again among the kulelat, no? I mean, not to degrade the incumbent leadership, but it's a pity because after President Cory, President Ramos, they had 12 years of continuous. With President Cory, we earned the respect, no, of the foreign community. Nagkaroon ng mukhang Filipino, no? It's like a bloodless revolution. With President Ramos, who had always been protective of the Cory administration on all the 7 or 9 attempts, being consistent supporting her, when he took over, he knew already what had to be done. So he put in his own military and scientific culture and improved whatever had to be improved. So it is a 12 years of continuous growth. Then GMA, of course, that seems to be hewing closer to economic growth. GMA being an economist, although there were some political issues, but still there's a tradition of following certain economic requirements.
Yes,
No?
yes.
Mahaba na ba? Mahaba na.
No, it's okay. It's okay. You were also in the foreign. I remember you were also in the foreign relations and the national defense committees.
Well,
membership. But the reason why I want to ask you is because FBR.
I've to lean forward because I'm little.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm
But
sorry.
Yeah, it's all right.
FBR pretty much juggled foreign policy, foreign relations,
Yeah.
and the defense and security issues into one. You know, he used ASEAN to stand up against China
Yeah.
when the incursion started
Yeah.
into the West Philippine Sea. Your
About
your
the-
sense of that.
The UNCLOS, no? UNCLOS.
Yes.
Territorial issues. Yeah, I wasn't really so much involved in that, although I'm not so active as a member of the foreign affairs, Committee of Foreign Affairs. It was more like, I think, Bert Romulo or Cablas Ople, yeah. But I was assiduously looking at from the point of national security because at the time I was chairman. I think Pong Biason was not there for a while, so I took over.
Yes.
Drilon asked me, "Can you take care of this for a while?" I was like the default of several Senate leaders because they knew that I'm not really wedded to any committee. So when somebody liked agriculture, I can give it. National defense, when Pong Biason came back, I gave it back to him. But while I was in national defense, during GMA's time, 2001 on, we were able to, with her support, approve the general adjustment of salaries
Okay. Yeah.
of the armed forces, AFP. Dahil mas mahal ang sweldo ng PNP. Ha? Nauna. Oo.
Okay.
Ha?
Hindi ba na-address ni FBR yung panahon niya?
I'm not sure, but it was in 2002 that we were able to catch up
Okay.
with the PNP. Then the other issue is the retirement,
Okay.
retirement issue.
Did
Yeah.
the FBR had 6 years. Ano? Do you think he had enough time to do what he set out to do?
Well, for sure he will pursue the assimilation of the Mindanao economy because he had a special attachment to Mindanao, having, I think, served there for a long time.
Yes.
And he had a lot of personal friends who would give him a lot of feedback, like Edel Amante.
Yeah.
Yan, very close sila yan eh. But I think his 6 years, even if it could have been extended, afforded the future leaders to use his experience and earlier to although develop their own framework of political strategy and implementation.
He created the momentum.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So, Toby, I think we've been talking for almost 45 minutes. But we are neighbors with President Ramos. And,
Let me just maybe ask one last question.
Yeah.
What's your view as FVR's legacy, as key legacy as president?
all right. I would, again, putting the basis of your question of legacy, I think President Ramos personified the ideal political and political, social, economic leadership in inspiring the Philippines to unite because they trusted him. And so the other lesser political leaders also had to accept and support him. So he united the people, he gave them hope, meaning it will be a better life. And that was so. That was so, because they were all feeling confident and optimistic. And more so, we are an OFW economy. Basically, 10% of the Filipinos are always overseas. We love, not love, but we have to go abroad to augment our income here. Wala, mababa dito income eh. So he was constantly harping on his legacy of giving them hope, inspiring them with his own initiatives here to improve opportunities and jobs. And that was the strength of the globalization at that time, after the WTO, no? Yan. So it kept on improving, but he didn't have enough time, because many of the initiatives during his time were for better infrastructure. So during his time was started North Rail.
Yeah.
That was going to La Union, no? High-speed ferrocarril, Spanish. Remember that? And after that, it got muddled. That's the unfortunate thing about our culture, government culture. Every time there's a new president, the previous one's good progress is either removed or weakened. Walang continuity tayo. And from the time of Cory, Ramos, 12 years yan. Then another one, ganon. Pero there should be some kind of consistency in national projects. So it's the legacy of continuity. We hope that future leaders, including our President Digong, should look at this as a frame of reference of better leadership and better country.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.